Welcome to the Entrepreneur Show. This is your host, Michael Mara. I'm the CEO and founder of Entre, a social network for entrepreneurs, investors, and freelancers. On this show, we interview the top CEOs, venture capitalists, angel investors, and founders. Connect with me and thousands of other like-minded people by signing up for free at joinentre.com or download our mobile app on iOS and Android. On this episode, I'm interviewing Nash Ahmed. He's the CEO and founder of Undock, an AI-enabled productivity platform that's completely changing the way we schedule, host, and document meetings. They just raised $1.6 million from Lightship Capital, Bessemer, and a bunch of other amazing investors. We dive into a bunch of stuff, getting into his background in entrepreneurship, how he got started with all of this, his previous company, which led him to ultimately starting Undock. We go through accelerators, investors, all sorts of amazing tips and tricks on starting companies. I'm super excited for you to listen to this, and let's get right into it. Welcome to the show, Nash. It's so nice to have you here, man.
Thanks for having me, Michael. Excited. Very excited.
Yeah, no, I've been looking forward to this a lot, especially as we've gotten to know each other over the last few months, and super big fan of what you guys are doing at Undock now, and we'll definitely be jumping into all of that later on. But I thought it'd be really cool to dive a little bit into your background. What was it like growing up in New Jersey, going to school there? And then how did you get into all this entrepreneurship stuff?
So I got into entrepreneurship, I would say, mainly after watching my father open a couple of convenience stores. And I think I said very early that I wanted to be a businessman, not really knowing what that meant. But I know that meant you owned some sort of operation and you didn't work for anyone. So I like the idea of that. I started off with like a paper route when I was 12. Then I started working like at a podiatrist's office. I worked at McDonald's for a couple of summers. So I had like work ethic instilled in me very young, but I think I was 14 or 15 when I decided I didn't want to work for anyone. So it's like, all right, I'm going to get a degree in business management. So that's what I knew growing up. I want to own a business. I want to be a business, quote unquote, businessman. And then I got into technology around 13 or 14. And I saw technology as fun and cool. And I saw businessman as my career. And then just before getting into college, it became clear that the two can converge. And that's what I've been attempting to do for most of my life.
And I would have to say you've done that pretty well, for sure. And it is funny, and it's actually pretty wild you had that foresight back then, because merging technology and business has what's made literally the wealthiest people in the world over the last 30, 40 years. It's been pretty crazy. So I think it'd be cool to talk a little bit more about the stuff that you learned maybe from your father or other people like early on, and kind of what led you down that, or what you learned from these early jobs. If there was anything in particular that you saw how your dad ran the stores, or something that he instilled in you, or maybe even somebody else or a mentor like that really got you into this, like, okay, there's a huge opportunity here, and to be an entrepreneur business and get into technology, but here's the right way to do it, and here's some of the things that my either father or early mentors kind of instilled in me that stuck with you all the way through.
Yeah, I know a lot of people have these really concrete formation stories, and from this period to this period, this transition, and I knew that actually did not happen for me. So the concept of being a businessman and owning a business was still very distant, even though my father had a couple of stores. And the one phrase that I actually remember him saying is that if something is worth doing, it's worth doing well. But outside of that, it wasn't really like a time where I learned a lot about business through what he was doing. And I actually think, you have they ask you what you want to be when you grow up, and businessman just stuck, and I just kept saying it and saying it and saying it until it felt right. But I remember the moment that I decided that I was going to work in tech in some way, shape, or form. I was actually riding with one of my colleagues in a car. Hold on 1 second. We'll roll that section back.
Yeah,
So
cool. No
yeah,
worries.
I remember the moment that I decided I was going to do something in tech. I was riding in the car with my friend, and our boss asked us what we wanted to do, and I just said computer science. And that was the first time that I decided I was going to do something in tech. Literally in that moment, I don't know what came over me, but that happened on a car ride junior year, and that stuck ever since. But I do remember my first time thinking that computers. I'm older than I look. My first time thinking computers would be big and anything digital and technology related would be big was I entered the New Jersey stock market game. I think it was like 11 or 12. And the goal was to invest in stocks that were growing in that time period. And everyone was doing like research, they're looking up trends and all this other stuff. I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to pick all of the computer companies as my portfolio. And I did that and ended up winning second place in the statewide competition. But I was like, yeah, tech companies, computers, digital, that's the way of the world. That's the way it's going to be. So again, those two ideas, working in tech and being a businessman, didn't converge right away. It just happened just before I went off to college. So
Gotcha. Yeah, that's super funny. It's weird how things work out too. And this was like what in the mid 2000s, right? Right when kind of
younger.
This
was 1996.
Okay, wow. So
my stock
you
pick was,
definitely look way younger than
yeah. My stock pick was into it.
Okay, nice. Well, hey, that's good. That's a good pick.
Yeah.
You would invest in that like, yeah.
If I would actually invested like $100, then that would have been a really good move. So
yeah. Oh, for sure. That's super fascinating. And yeah, no, that's really cool. So I'm curious too, like, so you studied business, then you started getting into technology and stuff. Yeah. What as you got out of school, did you want to get a job? Like, were you trying to get a job? Were you trying to start a business? What was your thought process as you're like in college and going through that? And like, how did you approach, being a college graduate, but then also like wanting to start a business or do something else? So like, I'd love for you to speak on that.
Yeah, I had the classic college diversion tack. So I started working or making music in college, and then I thought, oh, I could be a producer, a music producer. So right out of college, I said, well, I'm not getting a job, sorry, Mom, but I'm gonna keep producing music. So we were doing relatively well. We worked with some famous artists and started to get checks here and there. So it seemed like a viable thing at 20 years old. I think I graduated at 20. I graduated at 20. It seemed like a viable opportunity. So I did that, and then I started a couple like small odd businesses in that time frame to like stay afloat. But then after about 2 years, there was a very specific incident that I won't get into, but the music business has its ups and it has its downs. After one of the major downs, it's like, okay, so maybe it's a hobby, not a professional career. So I went back, I started my MBA, and after my first or second semester in my MBA, I said, I need to also get some real world experience, but I was completely averse to working for anyone. So I said to myself, you're going to apply for jobs, something marketing, tech related, and the first job you get, you're going to take it. Doesn't matter where it is, doesn't matter what it is, just apply for business, tech jobs, whatever you get, you're going to take it. So I did that, and part of my plan was to stay at that company or whatever company it was, but stay at that company for 3 months and then go get another job and then go back to finish my MBA. So that was my plan. And sure enough, my 3-month plan of staying at turned into 7 years. And I became owner of the company because I had an opportunity to first become an executive and then become owner very quickly. And I'm like, well, why go for my MBA to eventually work my way up the ladder to do that when I can do what I really want to do, which is own my own businesses. So I made that leap 10 years ago. So that's how I officially, became a full-time entrepreneur.
That's fascinating. And this is Viperbox, right?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. So walk me through how that went, because I feel like this is a very rare thing and maybe something that a lot of people don't ever think is even possible, which is like becoming an entrepreneur through being, I guess there's a term now called intrapreneur or whatever, but like actually just working your way up through an organization to become CEO, right? And it happens in large companies, but it takes usually 20, 30 years at least to get to that. So how did you do that in 6, 7 years? How did you, what was it that, how do you think you were able to advance that quickly?
So I remember the conversation. I remember the timing. It was about a week before I was going to put in my 2 weeks notice, or say that I'm going to start looking for other jobs, not necessarily put in a.
And how long was this into the company?
That was 2.5 months I was there, because I had a plan.
Oh, wow. So you were legit going to do the 3-month thing. And then
when I said I was going to accept the first job just to have a job, that's what I was doing. And it was literally the first job that I applied for. Like, because I had previously applied for jobs, went in, got offered the position, and I would just say, yeah, actually, I really don't want to work here. Sorry for wasting your time. So I put it on myself to accept whatever the first job that I was offered was. So I did that, but I said, you're not going to stay here. I was going to job hop for about 2 years while finishing my MBA. That was my strategy. Like, I wrote down a plan for 2 years, and then 5 years, and then 10 years, and then 15 years. So my strategy was to job hop, to quickly jump up the ladder rather than do it within a company. So there was one moment where my boss at the time says, you know what, I could see you as an executive of this company. And I look around, like, there's 3 people here. So at first, my first thought is like, yeah, that's not that interesting to me. But my second thought was, oh no, this is actually the opportunity to build something and be that executive very quickly. So everything they were doing was on paper. Nothing was digitized. Not much was going on the website. I'm like, oh, that's my experience. I know how to do web development, web design. I think I have some good marketing ideas. I definitely like love implementing all sorts of productivity things. So like, I got us on Salesforce. I changed our inventories, or created an inventory system for the warehouse, made processes for meetings and sales and all this other stuff. So I'm like, I'm doing all these things, learning how to do some of these things for the first time, all in about a 6-month period. So I had the hands-on learning, just getting thrown into the fire for literally everything. And then within about 6 months, almost all of the decisions started going through me. And then, I think it was 9 months into it, I started hiring. And long story short, we went from 3 employees to 21 employees over a few years. We doubled the revenue, like 4 or 5x the profitability of the business. And then I started to expand into different sectors. And I was actually trying to transform this business, which was a telecommunications company. I was actually trying to transform it into a service company. So we were selling hardware, and I'm saying to myself, this business isn't going to last the next 5 or 10 years. I can't see a world where Amazon doesn't crush any hardware sales business. And I was saying this in like 2011 or 12. So I tried to convert that business into a service business. And I actually think doing that was what led to, I know it's what led to me being extremely busy. And then being extremely busy is what led to me to try to find a solution to manage my availability, which is what led me to Undock. So yeah.
That's an amazing transition. I don't think I could have.
I didn't plan that, but yeah.
That's super fascinating.
Yeah.
And I think it's interesting to note too how different product and service based businesses are, and how much the one relies so heavily on planning and scheduling and calendar and like having everything in order. And like, I think that that's fascinating. And this is what, Undock is solving. So, very, very, very cool. So I think it'd be a perfect segue into sharing, how did you then like transition out of Viperbox into Undock? How did that all work? Were you like, I'm much more interested and curious about this idea, and I kind of want to, transition out of this. How did that all go down?
Yeah, I wish it was a transition. I was more shot out of a cannon into it. Let me see, how can I put all this together? So I was running 2 other companies at that time, because I'd started a couple other businesses at that time as well. So I was running a couple other businesses. I was trying to figure out what my exit strategy was for most of those businesses. My goal was to have a few streams of income from these businesses so I can go work on something that I really wanted to build. So I didn't have that much interest in what I was working on at these businesses, but it was something that, pays bills, right? And you can transition those types of business, especially if it's a service business, especially in the sector we were working on, which is, servicing businesses for voice, video, access control, lighting, all these other things that we were doing. So it's not going anywhere. So you can turn that into a robust passive income business, then go build your moonshot. So I had 49 different business ideas, and I registered domains for all of them. All of them had a domain name. I spent entirely too much time like, oh, forget what the business is. What am I going to call it? All right. I register the domain, pay the $8 a year or whatever to keep them. And I had 49 domains. At some point I said, this is kind of crazy. Are you actually going to start any of these businesses, or are you just going to keep on buying domains? So I stopped at 49, and I said, you know what I'm going to do? I am going to start one of these businesses. Truth be told, I was ambitious enough. I thought I could start 2 startups at the same time. So at the same time I started Undock, I started another startup called Patched. All right. So we'll circle back to that. But my goal was to sort through all of my business ideas and figure out which ones I would actually go work on now. So I made a fictitious portfolio site called Walderstone, and it was supposed to represent the future of of my business empires. And I put the top 15 ideas that I had on there and pretended that they actually existed. I went as far to make landing pages for about 4 or 5 of them. I made logos for at least 5 or 6 of them. And I put little taglines, like a byline for what each of them do. If you look in the Wayback Machine, you should be able to find it. I should do that. I don't remember all of them. I remember the top 4 or 5, but I don't remember all of them. So I think maybe 6 months to a year of just sorting these ideas and figuring out which one I thought was the biggest or best or most timely idea is what led me to eventually choose to work on both Undock and the other company called Patched. And I actually registered Patched before I registered Undock. So I thought that might have been a better business, something I would have a nice smooth transition into, because it was tangentially related to what I was already working on. But yeah, I started with all those ideas, and then at some point I was sitting in my office and I'm on a phone call, and I have a call on hold, and a line of employees forms outside of my door, and I'm like, managing my availability is really hard, and it's only going to get harder. And that's when I started working on Undock. And the first version of Undock was not even a website. It was a physical product. I don't need to go through the long journey of it, but it was a physical product. I originally called it the Presence Pod, and it was like a little light that would show people within my office, whether I was in a meeting, on a phone call, busy or otherwise free. Long story short, transitioned to an online portal, then transitioned into being called Undock and what we're building now. So yeah, that's my journey into Undock. It was very structured, kind of like I don't know, Game of Thrones, not Game of Thrones, Hunger Games for business ideas, and Undock one.
Yeah,
competition.
I absolutely love that. I think that that's such a great way of doing it, honestly. And I'm a victim of the domain name curse as well. I think
Yep.
at one point I had like 75.
Yeah.
So I think I'm probably down to like 30 or 40 now, because every year they come up to renew. I'm like, what was I
Yep.
thinking?
Yeah.
Honestly, like,
Exactly it.
so stupid.
They ping
But
you.
I was the same way, and I think that's it is interesting how it all plays out. I think it's super fascinating how you approached it with that, because I didn't have the foresight into like knowing that I should just pick one. I was like, oh, I'll just do all of this, and
Yeah.
like
Yep.
that will never work, right?
No.
You have to have focus and direction into like one main thing, or else it's going to be very difficult to have anything large.
Absolutely.
So that was, I think, fascinating, like approach and strategy to it. I want to like hear, like what made you decide, okay, this is the one that, like, how did you start checking them off? Like, okay, this one's no good, this one's no good, not interested in this. And then how did you come to those like final two and then eventually the one? Like, were there any things that you were like, it was like obvious sign that like, okay, this isn't going to work, or like, how did you approach that?
Well, the top three, and I'll give like a short synopsis of them. One was Undock, but again, remember, start off as a presence pod. The other one was Patched, which was finding a way to Uberize the service business for service business for businesses. We're servicing businesses for all those technologies that I mentioned earlier. Finding a way to Uberize that, and I've seen a couple companies pop up, like Managed by Q, kind of like sort of almost got what I was thinking about, but not quite. But the fact that Managed by Q existed made me think that, and they were doing very well, that this is a big opportunity for this type of business. So that was in the top running. There was one called Rendezvous instead of Rendezvous, and it was the whole idea about that was I was growing multiple businesses, and I'm always interviewing and always hiring, and I hated the interview process, all of it. The interview process was just terrible. And today it's still largely a waste of time. So I came up with this fast, innovative way, which I'm not going to totally give away because I've rolled part of that into the Undock product, but a fast, innovative way for you to like schedule your interviews with people and kind of just do it anywhere. And then there was Undock. So really, I started thinking about all of those solutions and which one could scale the biggest. All right. So Undock had so many use cases, and then I thought the business Patched had a ton of use cases as well, that I put those two in the top, and I started working, or registered, and I started working on formalizing both of those businesses. But the more and more I thought about Undock and like managing availability and how it kind of touches everything, it became obvious to me that if you solve for availability, solve for managing someone's availability, you can touch a lot of different things and grow a huge, huge business. So my idea for Undock isn't even to be in the category of any sort of calendar or scheduling company. It's like availability is a software category that just does not exist. The same way search was a software category that did not exist until the 90s. And I think availability is one that's going to grow into that. And we're going to be a early player in the availability. And I'm trying not to give away too much about what we're doing about the product behind the scenes. But yeah, we're going to be an early player in that space.
Nice. Yeah, I think especially right now, more than ever, everybody's schedules are all over the place.
Yep.
And we're so reliant on technology right now that it's like, it's overwhelming, and I love how you guys do it. Cause I just like, I was on a thread with your team. Like, obviously we've been, talking for a while. Like, I just scheduled a call with David in 2 seconds. Like, I'm actually talking to him later tonight after this, you know what I mean? But it's so simple, right? And, for the, previously there was, like the majority of people use like Calendly or something, but there's limitations with that, and it's not easy to sync up and whatnot. So I think it's super fascinating. I think now would be a great time for you to, as much as you want to tell without, giving out too much, because I know you guys are publicly launching here, but give us a quick overview of Undock. And then I want to dive in a little bit to the inception story. How did you meet David? Going through the accelerator, all of that stuff too. And we can talk about raising money as well.
Yeah. So Undock when is this releasing, by the way? When is this coming out? After the event?
This is going to be before the launch, because we're going to try to get more people to come. So
gotcha.
Some people might listen to this afterwards, but we are going to roll this out before so that we can get people to come to the launch event. So
I won't tell them. It's
you can use that to decipher what you want to share.
Got it. Okay. So Undock helps people instantly schedule, host, and document their meetings. And the first product that we're releasing is a Chrome extension that allows you to schedule directly in your email. Right now it's in Gmail and Microsoft. And the way it works is very similar to autocomplete. If you're typing in your email and you're talking to Michael, John, and Sarah, you're typing in your email, you say, hey, team, let's meet. You hit the Undock key and up pops the next best time for you to meet. And you can enter that suggestion in for the email and it becomes a clickable link. People can confirm in one click. And that works swimmingly, whether you're meeting with one person, two people, five people. But it works even better if the other person or the other people that you're meeting with have signed up for Undock, because we will privately take their calendar, their preferences, their scheduling behavior, and incorporate that into our suggestions. So we're not calendar sharing. We're not sharing booking pages. We do have a booking page. We don't need to share booking pages. You don't need to talk to a chat bot or anything. It's just we're improving the suggestions that you're sending back and forth to each other all the time with your schedule, the other person's schedule, your preferences, the other person's preferences, and your scheduling behavior. So we're essentially getting you to the time that you would have deduced after 3, 4, 5 emails in half a second.
Right. Yeah. And that's why I love it, because I'm still on these email threads with people. And I just did this, I think last week or maybe 2 weeks ago, literally was on a thread with, probably 8 of our like investors, advisors, people on our team and stuff. And I was like, when's everyone available? And even just throwing that out, it's a mess. Because not everyone can just throw out their calendar link and whatnot. And that's where
they all had calendar links. How are you going to put them all to figure it out?
Exactly. And that's where you guys are taking that next step, which is so nice. And I think you guys are really like, it's just something that's clearly needed. And as you guys grow, it's just so sticky too, because like you said, once everyone else has it, you don't need to do anything else, right? And it will integrate with whatever email provider you have. So no, it's really, really cool. And I'd love to share how I know you touched on hiring, which I think is a really important thing to touch on. And I'd love for you to give any advice you have for people on that, and how you went about, linking up with David. I'm not sure how you guys met, how you went about finding co-founders in your early team. I think that's really, really important. And then talk about, how you guys got into, it's ERA. Yeah. Okay. Entrepreneurs Roundtable Accelerator, right? In New York City. I'd love for you to share a little bit about that experience as well.
Absolutely. So hiring is humbling. If you take it personally, hiring is very, very humbling, because most of the time you're going to get it wrong. And now in this generation, like the average tenure at a company is like 2 years or something like that. So you're constantly, especially if you're growing, you're just constantly going to be hiring, but you're going to get it wrong a lot. So the first thing you have to do is just like take your ego out of it. And that actually helps you with that, axiom of hire slow, fire fast. Once you take your ego out of it, firing fast becomes like nothing. So I struggled with that early on in my career. I would hire and I'd say, this is probably not going to work. Then 6 months later, that person is still there. And then 9 months, they're still there. And I should just cut bait as early as possible. So the first thing is like, don't take hiring like personally. You're going to get it wrong a lot. Now, more specifically for finding a co-founder. So after I incorporated the business, like I sent my first email out. It was really one of the only, I think I've only sent like 3 investor solicitation emails out in my entirety, but I sent one out and I got a response back, and I was on a plane to meet an investor. And one of the conversations he had with me was about hiring fast. I mean, hiring slow and firing fast. But the other conversation was about, why are you by yourself? Are you sure if you're actually going to do this business, are you sure you don't need a co-founder? And I'm like, well, I have sales experience. I have tech experience. I have business experience. There are plenty of solo founders that have taken the journey by themselves. But I realized that if I don't want to build a $500 million business. I don't want to build a $1 billion business. I don't even want to build a $5 billion business. I want to build a 25, 50, $100 billion business. And you do that by affecting the way a lot of people work and growing really fast. So at some point, I decided that I definitely do need a co-founder to come on board. But it took me, and this is just a real story, it took me 4 months before that co-founder search actually became real. Because I sat with an executive coach, and she's like, all right, what are your priorities? What's the most important thing for you? And I was like, oh, well, I'm growing this product, getting ready to release it in the next 6 months or so. Definitely want to have a co-founder. So I think that's probably the most important thing, because I can't do growth as much as I want to, as well as build the product. And she says, okay, let's do a calendar audit. All right, let's look at your calendar. How much time have you actually spent looking for a co-founder? And it was embarrassing. So I was like, I've been doing it for 4 months. She's like, well, have you been doing it for 4 months? Or did you start 4 months ago? And that's when intentionality took over, and it became less I'm looking for a co-founder. I'd like to add a co-founder. It became a process. So I posted on Co-Founders Lab. I posted on AngelList. I posted on LinkedIn. I went on a bunch of forums. I was communicating with people. And then I created a list myself of 80-something potential co-founder candidates. And then I whittled that down to maybe 15, 20. And I had extremely long conversations with all of them. Like my first interview with them, it was a marathon. And I explained that to them. Like, we're gonna talk, well, not the first interview. I'd give like a 15, 30-minute interview to feel if there's like a connection there. And then we would sit for 2, 3, 4, 5 hours in these interviews. So if you're looking for a co-founder, don't take it like a normal job hiring process. Like, spend a ton of time with the person, and then know what you're looking to get out of them. So somebody can be really good at something, but it may not be what you exactly need for your business at that time. So figure out what you need, and then spend a ton of time with that person when you're looking for a co-founder. And I actually did that for any high-level role that I hired. I still do that for any high-level role that I hire. It's like I spend a lot of time with the person. So I met David in April. He didn't end up signing until the end of July, and he didn't end up starting until November. And I met my VP of engineering at the same time. I met him in April, and he didn't end up signing until October. So that's 5 months of conversations that you're having with people that you're going to bring into your company at a very high level. So that's hire slow, and that's kind of worked out for me in the early going. Now I hired like 10 people in the last 6 weeks or something. So we're on a kick. You can't really move too slowly at that stage. But yeah, that's my advice about hiring. And if I can go into the accelerator right away if you want, or if you have any.
Yeah. No, I'm glad you went into all of that. I think it's super helpful. And I'm a huge believer in a lot of the stuff that you said there. It's one of the hardest things for sure. I went through struggles, and, I've had a lot of different, kind of partners and stuff. And, it hasn't been super easy, and that right there is literally one of the reasons which led me to starting Entre, was to solve like, finding that those early team members is really hard. So that's definitely like one of the things that, we're trying to solve and help at least alleviate for a lot of people, is like at least get into, a community and a network where you can meet these types of people that are at least interested in startups and that sort of thing.
I would have found my co-founder on Entre if it existed when I was doing it. That's really where you want to be, because even your earliest employees, you want them to be entrepreneurial. You want them to be these communities involved. And like, if you can poach somebody that was trying to start their own business and they come on as a co-founder for you, or if they come on as an early employee, you're going to be so much better off. So Entre is the community. Start there.
No doubt. I appreciate the plug. But no, I think it's super interesting. And one of the things that I like doing too is I just like starting to work with people, right? Like, hey, let's just jump right. Like, let's just start figuring that out, because I'm going to know literally within, like, if we're legit, like doing meetings and going through designs or, ideas and stuff together, like a couple weeks, I'm going to know whether you're even cool to work with or not. Right. Yeah. Screw the interviews and all the BS and whatever else. Like, let's jump right into it. Do these few things. Let's see how those go. Let's talk through them. Let's see if you can get stuff done. And if you're cool to like think through ideas with, because if that's not cool on like little tasks and little assignments, not a chance it's going to be good, over the next 5 to 10 years, because that's really what you have to sign up for too.
Yes.
That was a huge unlock for me. Was, all right, I didn't realize that, okay, these people don't really understand like how long this is part of. And like, I'm in this for forever, right? Like whatever, you know what I mean? But making sure the other people are able to commit the same amount of time, they commit the same amount of passion, and they're in it for the long haul, are things that I didn't really look deep enough into, like at the beginning, that I would 100% spend way more time on doing that, bringing on new people now.
Yeah, that's really important. I workshop with each of the people after I determined that I could like hang out with them. And I definitely avoided making a very, very wrong hire. Like, they checked all the boxes. They were at the right startups and they answered all the questions except for one question, which was like the first red flag. But then when we had our first like whiteboard work session, I was like, no, it's not going to work. So that's another great tip, that if you have a chance to even have like one brainstorm session or something with them to see how they work and how they think, like in a practical setting.
Yeah. 100%. So I think, it would be great to how you guys, now, did you get into ERA yourself, and then David and your other partner, they joined in as you were already part of that, or did you guys team up and then apply, or how did that go down? And then obviously describe your experience through that and any advice you have on people trying to get into accelerators and what you think of them too.
Yeah, I think it depends. There are a couple things. So I applied to YC and I applied to Jason Calacanis's accelerator, and I got interviews for both of those. And I was by myself at the time, and like they were really sticking on the co-founder thing and being pretty far away from launch at that time. And the second time around, I think having a co-founder, having a more solidified team, and having a product that was pretty close to launching were some of the key factors to getting into the accelerator. I'm not sure that without one of any of those things that I listed, that we may or may not have gotten in. I was always able to get interviews. I think anything around productivity that's taking any sort of twist, especially around calendars, investors, and accelerators, like maybe this is the one, because we've seen 100 of them. Maybe this is the one. So, but yeah, getting into the accelerator was always part of my plan, because I did the same thing that I did after college, where I said, I'm going to do this for 2 years, and I'll do that for 2 years. I wrote out I still have it. I wrote out a 5 and a 7 year plan for Undock, which included the eventual exit, included accelerator, included all the fundraising rounds to get to where we needed to be. And I was almost certain that an accelerator was what I needed to get to the next level. I did not go to Stanford, did not go to Harvard, knew no one in Silicon Valley, had never chatted with an investor, did not work at Facebook, Apple, whatever, but I knew what I was trying to do, needed those types of investors to scale it. So I thought my best entry into that world was an accelerator. There are thousands of accelerators we could apply to. The only ones I would apply to were the ones that I thought could give me that leg up. So I think I only ended up applying to 4 total accelerators. We got interviews at 3 and then accepted into 1. But the timing of that accelerator, that was the last accelerator application. According to my charts, that was the last time I was going to apply to accelerator. We didn't get to accelerator by January. We were just going to fundraise after we released the product for a few months. But I'm so glad that we got to the accelerator, not from the fundraising perspective, but it was number one, figuring out how to talk about my business to investors and to clients, and then really thinking critically about the business every single day. You don't get much feedback about your business. Even if you're giving your product out to customers, you're not really getting that critical feedback constantly from the outside on your business. You're getting product feedback for sure, but you're not getting business feedback. An accelerator, at least this accelerator that we went to, ERA, every single day answering questions about your business, challenging all of your assumptions, like, well, why would anybody use this product? Or how is this a big business? Or the biggest player in this space does X, how are you going to 10X that? Like, just thinking about that stuff constantly made us make some really critical decisions about product and go to market that we would not be in the same place that we are now just from that side of it. And then there's the whole fundraising aspect. So the accelerator was single-handedly responsible for me figuring out how to talk about the business to investors. And then I made a demo day video, because it was during the pandemic, a demo day video that was very well received. And that's what enabled us to start fundraising.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought this up too, because it's one of the things that I've learned now too, is getting super clear on the pitch, and not just like what you think in your head or whatever, but understand, because there is a certain way to talk to investors.
Yes.
And there's certain expectations that they have, certain language, certain things that they want to see.
Yep.
And if you don't show those things and you don't understand how they're thinking about it, then you're going to miss the whole thing. So if you break down venture capital, right, it's majority old white males. It's 40% from Stanford and Harvard, and the majority of the money comes from the Valley and whatever, right? So if you understand that, then you have to understand how they think and the types of things that they want to see, right? I think it's starting to change a lot, but there's still, it's not, like numbers trump all. So if you have like huge numbers and you're making a boatload of money, or you have a ridiculous amount of users, obviously you're going to be able to raise money from a lot of people. Yep. But if you're pre-launch, pre-revenue, you're building something, you have tech, whatever, you have to tell like the story. You have to show like the numbers very specifically. You have to understand the language that they want to see. So I'm really glad you brought that up. Do you have any quick advice for people, like any things that like changed the total way like that you thought about how to approach investors? Like any quick thoughts that you have on that?
The biggest transformation was we were raising a seed or a pre-seed, and prior to the accelerator, I was talking about the business in its final form. Like I refused to say, "Oh, we do sketches." I was like, "No. This is G Suite on steroids. The entire G Suite on steroids." That's how I went about talking about the business. After the accelerator, after the demo day, I'm like, "Hey, scheduling is a really big problem that many people face frequently, and while there's 3 or 4 players that are starting to make some inroads, blah blah blah, so like you're setting the stage, and you're talking about this really specific problem, and you're super nuanced, super insightful, unique way of solving it, and how that turns into this big business. And then you sprinkle a little bit at the end, like, hey, this can go from this to this to that. So that was the single change from how I talked about my first pitch decks were so bad. They were so bad. I was like, time protocol, space protocol. Space is communication, time is scheduling. I'm building these two protocols, and then they're eventually going to converge in 2 to 4 years, and it's going to create, again, going to put us in the same pantheon with Microsoft and Google. That's how I thought. That's still how I think about the underlying business, but that's a very big leap for an investor to take from, again, not Stanford, not Harvard, not Apple, Facebook, not Silicon Valley. It's not going to happen.
Yeah, this is so funny because I was the exact same way. I had these huge things, and it was funny because it was a few months back. I was looking at like my original plans, like what I wanted to accomplish in 1 year was literally like insane. I was like, we're going to do this and software and real estate and marketplace. And I was like, knowing what I know now, I'm like, dude, you were insane. Like, what are you thinking? So I think it's very what you said, and being at least starting with the very specific problem, very specific, maybe couple features or specific thing that you're solving, and then sprinkling a little dust on the way. I don't even tell people what my real plan is anymore. I'm like, here's my whole plan. This is what I tell investors. Because they wouldn't be able to grasp the whole thing, and they wouldn't be able to see how it all puts together and everything else. I don't tell people anything that I'm really trying to do, because they would think I'm all over the place and disfocused and everything else. And in a lot of ways, it's kind of true if you're trying to tackle all of that at one time. So,
but you have belief and conviction, and you've seen your end game.
100%.
Be a matter of execution for you to get there, and then everyone will be like, oh, I see what he was doing, and he was right the whole time, right? And that's how we have to be. That's what we have to believe. But the key is, like, nobody's ready for all of that yet. So right now, interestingly enough for me, after I had enough money raised, my conversation with investors was completely different, because I wasn't going to take any of their money. So I started sprinkling more of that future stuff into the conversations, just to see, like breadcrumbs, to see if people were biting. And I got some bites and I got some nibbles. And now I have to say, all right, this next round, yes, I'm going to talk about what we've built. Yes, I'm going to talk about what we've done. Yes, I'm going to talk about where we're immediately going. But now I can bring a little bit more of that future roadmap into it. So instead of it being like that 5%, 2% sprinkle at the end, now it's maybe like a 10 to 20% sprinkle in this deck. And then you do that again. The next round's like, hey, we've done a lot. That's the end game over there. 30% of my deck about that. So I'm ready and I'm excited to do that. But I don't understand it takes time.
100%.
Everybody, everything at once.
That's the hardest part is, and I see a lot of like, it's becoming clearer and clearer how similar we think and stuff, but I'm living so much in the future. And it's one of the things too, I saw an interview with Jeff Bezos recently. He's like, I am thinking 3 years ahead at all times, right? I'm not thinking about tomorrow or that our earnings called now or whatever. Like that's whatever. Like I'm 3 years ahead. Like I'm worried about our quarter, in 2025, whatever, you know what I mean? And it's so interesting to understand that. But I think at the early stages, you have to be so like present with it. And, you want to think about the future and how you're going to set yourself up, but you can't focus in on that like at the early stages, because it's too hard. You have to like get things moving first. So, but yeah, I think it's super fascinating. But I don't think a lot of people
mousetraps, one foot in front of the other.
Yeah, 100%. And it's a long game. But I'm super excited about what you're doing. Share about the launch, because we're going to roll this out right beforehand. So tell us what's going down, when's it happening, and how people can learn more about the launch, and then everything else that you're doing. How can people sign up for Undock and anything else that you want to share before we wrap up?
Awesome. Yes. So on November 12th, and you can go to one.undock.com to register for this event. On November 12th, we are going to unveil some of the things that we've been working on here at Undock, definitely around meetings and scheduling, but there's a bit of a surprise there about the full scope, not the full scope at least. The next phase of the Undock product journey will be unveiled at the event. We're super excited about that, so go check that out. You can sign up for Undock today at undock.com. Just click the little sign in button and you'll be able to create an account. So yeah, sign up for Undock and solve your scheduling problems. I'll leave it there for now, but it's a lot more.
No, I love it. I'm super excited for this because I'm curious to take a little peek into your future mind a little bit.
I only dropped the smallest of nuggets for like users and what is coming, but I do tell them in general what it is. But there's no screenshots. I don't talk about any features, functionality, but it is. I've been using it for. I mean, it's great.
I'm excited, and yeah, I love everything that you're doing, and I'm looking forward to your future successes, and glad that we're connected, and super glad to have you as a fellow founder, friend, and everything too. But yeah, this was awesome, man. You absolutely killed it, and thank you so much for being here and taking the time.
Thanks a lot, Michael. I enjoyed it, and my success, your success, we're both going to be at the top. And again, we're going to look back and say this plan that we started in 2018 or 19 is now a reality in 2025 because we never gave up.
All day. It's in my mind, it's already happened.
Yeah, it's there. That's how you got to be. Sure.
All right. Appreciate it, Nash.
All right. Thanks.
Okay.